Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of Two Wizards and a Mic, where we are going to talk to you about why are you not giving this, Kickstarter money? No, I'm kidding. Lots of people have supported the Kickstarter so far, and that's what we're talking about today is the rise of the Mushroom King and how this Kickstarter is so close. I'll just show everyone here 254 backers, 3 days to go. And look at how close we are. Look.
$215.
So if you are listening to this right now or watching this right now, stop talking to us, go to the Kickstarter, fund this thing, and then you're going to get really cool stuff because it'll be kind of awesome. So, hi, Andrew. Um,
Hey, Shane,
this,
over there.
there, that way.
Yeah.
As I bash my microphone. So this particular Kickstarter is so close, but I threw some questions to you, and I'm very proud of this because once in a while I come up with an episode idea. Very rarely, but I do. It does happen. And so the one thing I was curious about was we've talked at length about the monster series and all of those creatures that have been created and those kinds of things, but to me, this is slightly different where you're actually taking the elements you've already created, the world, the creatures that inhabit said world, and this is actually pushing like out an adventure to say, hey, this is how you can actually live within this world. And that to me is a very different writing process in my mind. um, so basically, when you sat down, what was the first thing that you decided this adventure had to be? Because you'd already had some adventures prior to that a couple of years back, but this one is a brand new, I don't know, kind of a brand new take on everything. How did it start?
Yeah. Well, the first thing we did, because I have at least a dozen sort of stories in the world, including ones that our group in games with you and our friends, it includes some of those stories and some of those campaigns. There's probably a dozen I have sketched out that we haven't published and written about. And then what I did was I decided, hey, let's pull the backers of the Kickstarters and see what settings are they interested in, what monsters are they interested in, and does that tie into any of these stories that we already have brewing?
Right.
And sometimes more than brewed. Sometimes we played the campaigns for years. So the poll said that people really wanted to see more with the city and the dungeon settings. And they also were interested in seeing more with the Fae. So right away, I thought, okay, which of these stories does this really connect to? And the one that I thought about right away was what we'd written about in the Underworld book about how this evil aberration was sending out these spores through the underworld that actually mutated creatures into monsters and then put them under his control and continued to spread um, this darkness. And actually, they change alignment to his alignment. They get new abilities. They also often can continue to spread the spores. Easy for me to say, spread the spores. Um, so I thought, hey, that was a great story that we started there in the Underworld book. What would happen once those spores and those mutants got to the surface?
Okay.
And then I knew that we wanted to have an adventure that had low, mid, and high options. So I knew that having the same big bad guy from the Underworld book, this CR30 aberration, the Undervoid, I knew that was off the table because there's no way to make a lower version of that.
Right.
It is just this supremely powerful creature. Um, it does have weaknesses, but it is still pretty powerful. So then I looked at some of our favorite characters that people liked in monsters from the City book, and I found a couple that I wanted to put in the story that would fit into the dungeon level. So I knew I was going to have a city level, a dungeon level, and then the underworld. And that's in general how the adventure would go. So the party would enter the city in a very kind of peaceful environment, get to know the area, and then these mutants would start coming into the city, causing havoc, and clues would lead the characters into the dungeon. So then I thought, okay, well, these two characters that are very popular that would fit really well in here have to do with being in a guild. So then I decided, okay, so the dungeon for the most part is going to be controlled by this faction, this thieves guild faction. And then in the underworld, we're going to have the spores spreading into the dungeon and then into the city. So then, and the undervoid can't be the big bad evil guy. So working with Travis, we started to think about, okay, what could that look like? Who could that be? And we really love mushroom creatures. And if you look at Travis's art, he
Yeah.
always has fungi and mushrooms everywhere. It's one of his favorite themes. And we don't like how weak the myconids have become, and in general, they're just lame, especially in 5e. They're just beyond lame. Um, so we made some mushroom creatures called funga in the Underworld book, and a few others like the Toadstool Fool and the the Shroom Gloom,
Yep.
um, and we thought, hey, let's make another one of these creatures, and we created the Mushroom King. So we also thought, okay, we have these mushroom creatures. Let's add a twist. Let's make the king a fey creature that has ended up in the underworld somehow, and there's a whole story around that. And the fey creature gives you more options because the fey kind of have this tone of mischievous. They can be kind of ominous in a way too, um, unpredictable, and so that it gives more character to the villains in this story, because you are going to have a bunch of mushroom creatures and a bunch of new ones, but you're also going to have this fey element, and it gives like an intelligence to it as well, because many of the underworld creatures, other than the undervoid and maybe the drow, are not that bright. Um, but this guy is this mushroom king is very smart, so smart that I mentioned before. There's an optional ending that is an absolutely diabolical ending, um, which you could add, which will tie into the next story, so the second adventure we plan will actually link into this story, and you can continue um, what's happened already in the first book.
That is kind of cool. Like that to me, that is quite the process to get from, looking at an idea, going, "Oh, I found to be interesting. Oh, I'll
Yeah.
ask a few people." Like that's actually that's a lot of work. How long did that take to get from sort of first word being written to idea, from idea to that?
Well, the kind of new element was really doing that poll and seeing, hey, what can we do for our backers? What kind of things would they be interested in? Does that fit into a story that we already have brewing? It did. And then everything else usually comes fairly quickly, because I have these stories that are in the world that I've already, when I'm building the world, I already have like the roots of these things. And then pretty quickly it starts to form into a fully fledged story where it's almost like I can actually see everything and see what everything looks like and where it is. Um, that's one of the reasons actually I like being the dungeon master, because when I'm doing it, I can actually see, I've already made what everything is going to look like in terms of the setting and the characters. So I think that's one reason that storytelling also, is so primal, because the storyteller and the audience have like these you have a lot of this stuff innately built in you. And so
There's
it's
a
almost, yeah, like it's like, those archetypes are built in, right? So even the archetype of the mushroom person is an archetype really in our subconscious, in our psyche, especially
oh yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons players. There are a lot of examples of mushroom and mushroom creatures in the monster books and in adventures, and pretty quickly, like it starts to kind of form, and I have a vision for the whole of what the whole thing will look like. Um, so it was probably so we finished most of the world book, and that's when we started working on this more in detail, and that would have been around February. And then yeah, and then it's been, it's been hundreds of hours since then. Um, but it was pretty, the kind of general structure of some city encounters that wouldn't take a big part of the story, and then a larger dungeon story, and then an even larger underworld section. So, once I had that, um, I knew it. I knew the main pieces, and now I'm just doing the last little touches to it. I'm writing up the extra monsters that we might get with stretch goals, which we could mention shortly. Um, and I'm adding a bit more flavor and depth to the descriptions. But the overall story is, that formed pretty quickly.
Now, when you were putting it together, this was I'm trying to remember just roughly when you started really getting serious about putting a new adventure together.
Mhm.
And was that how long after the I'm trying not to say their name. The
Mhm.
whole Wizards thing last,
Right.
I think it was last beginning of 2023,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah,
was it
yeah.
after that? Because this particular book is very much like right out of the gate saying you don't have to be playing D&D. This could be used for other things,
Yeah.
other systems. So how did that influence how you put it together?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, the first thing that happened was last January, we'd already written quite a bit of the Monsters of the Dungeon book. And then when the OGL controversy happened, I rewrote almost the entire book to be system agnostic. So you could use it for any system. And it took everything out of it that was 5e. And then they caved and we got 5e back. So then I took the old version of the book that I already had written in 5e mechanics, and we worked on finishing that. And then last summer, after I'd finished my portion of the monster book, like the manuscript portion, then I started collecting all of the World of Mir, um, all of the published books we had and all the information I had, which was about 1,000 pages, probably more than that. And there's no way we can publish 1,000-page book. We don't. We don't. The Kickstarter would have to be like, in
Nine
the
hundred million dollars.
yeah, it'd have to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for sure. So we've spent the next 6 months or so getting that down to around 200 pages. Although we're going to have a PDF version for the Kickstarter backers that has a whole extra like 60 or 70 pages, but it won't be in the printed book because we can't make a book that big. Um, so yeah, and then the World of Mir book, we knew, hey, we can make this system agnostic too, because in a world book, you really don't need mechanics. So there's almost no mechanics in it. Like 99% of that book is for any fantasy role-playing game. And then so that was our new focus, was everything we do from now on. We're going to make it for as many kinds of systems as we can. And we'll give those conversion tables for other systems for people who buy our other books. So on Drive-Thru RPG, if you download the Monster series or our NPC book, you get a free conversion table. You get free conversion tables for those systems. So you can change the stat blocks if you want. Um, if you don't have those, you can just email us. If you bought it off our website or some other way or got it in the Kickstarter, you can just email us and we'll send you the conversion tables. So yeah, we knew the adventures, we want to make them as open as possible. And the world book and the adventure books, that's easy to do because you don't need many mechanics. The mechanics are really more in the stat block.
No, that's cool. I have a question completely off the top of my head, but how long did it take to? Because I can't imagine going back to your previous books and being like, all right, I got to create some conversion tables for the stuff that I wrote 4 years ago. Did that
Mhm.
actually take a long time, or is that pretty straightforward and simple to do?
That would have taken a really long time to do. That's not what we did. What we did was we looked at the general 5e stat block, and we looked at, okay, what are the most important parts to the stat block, and how can we convert those in the mechanics to these other systems? So we have basically grids where, for example, um, the armor class in 5e or in D&D, if that's armor class 15, what would the conversion to that be for old school essentials or dungeon crawl classics or Pathfinder 1 or Pathfinder 2? What would be the closest number that would be appropriate? And so we tried to make tables that are as authentic as possible to those systems. That would so it is some work. The dungeon master has to do some extra work. They have to go through the stat block and change those things themselves. But we've given you a blueprint of how you can do that. To to go in and redo every single stat block for each of those systems, that would take, for all of our books, that would take, you know, probably a
Years.
whole year or something. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the thing with having the printed material versus a PDF versus, I'm a print material kind of guy. I prefer to have the physical object. I like to read that kind of stuff. But yeah, but for those who want PDFs, I mean, why not? I mean, it's something that is useful to, I don't know, iPad readers or something or
Right.
whatever it might be. So those
Well,
kinds of things.
we put the conversion tables. Some of them are in the monsters of the dungeon book, right in the book, and in the adventure books, they're going to be right in the book. And the world book, I'd have to check. I can't remember if we ended up finalize. I don't think we put them in the final book, but again, we offer them on a PDF. Actually, no, we didn't put them for the world book because there's no stat blocks to convert. But the adventure book will have either 10 or 20 monsters, depending on stretch goals, monsters and NPCs. So we're going to put those in the adventure books to make it easier for those systems.
All right, let's see where are we at. Oh,
So
still
close.
254. So if you're checking out like the 72 pages of adventuring, soft cover versions, PDFs, come on. I mean, this is going to be one of the better books out there, if not the best. I'm biased, but whatever. Um, anything else you want to say about the Kickstarter or about the book or anything else?
Yeah, the main thing is that we're funding just for a little over 2 more days. We finish on Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific time, Friday the June 21st, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Um, on the East Coast, and that's actually 1 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time in the UK. So it actually goes till Saturday. So if you're up past midnight, that last hour in the UK, in Scotland and England and Wales, you can back the Kickstarter right then. The other thing is the add-ons and stretch goals.
Right.
So add-ons, we're actually going to add a new add-on. There's a bunch listed on the Kickstarter page, things you can add to your pledge. But the new one is we're going to give people a hardcover option because we've had at least 3 people ask for it. And so we listen. So people are going to be able to add 20 Canadian to their pledge, which will cover shipping as well. And then we'll turn that softcover adventure into a hardcover adventure. And it will be available for the US, Canada, and UK. The only reason we couldn't do it for the EU is that the shipping for the EU varies so much. But we are going to have it available for many of our backers. And the other thing is there's some of the add-ons. So all of the monster series, some of our handbooks, our comic book, and then if you just scroll down slightly there, Shane, there's also the World of Mir right there available as an add-on. Now, stretch goals. The first one is very close to, we're very close to it. Actually, it's listed there. So the first one would be to add an extra underworld map and an extra map of the whole city, which would be very cool. So a full page map that shows you the whole city. And you would add a few more encounters, several pages of encounters. The second goal would be to double the monsters and NPCs from 10 to 20. The third one is going to be, and tonight we'll put up the graphic, we'll update it so you can see them all. The third one is going to be more art for the adventure part of the book, including a full page art piece, which I think will be spectacular if we can get there. And the fourth goal at this point would be to add art for the magic item and spell section.
Oh. I want to know more. I'm looking forward to that new graphic because I'm actually curious what these stretch goal amounts are. Like where is it? Just 14,000 or 14,001? Like what's the next? I want to know I don't need to know all the details. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, 14,000 Canadian is the first one, and we're not very far from that already. We're 200 away now. We just had another backer.
Oh.
So if you're watching this later this week and the Kickstarter is still live, pretend that you are the person who could add $200 to fund this Kickstarter, and you could celebrate. Send us a message. You know what? If you do that, I'll actually, if we can prove that you did that, I will, which we can. I'll send you a prize.
But we won't tell you what it is because it's very important.
It'll be really good. It'll be really good. Trust me.
Here is his child.
What?
You get to babysit for 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah. Actually, we have 2 really old dogs. You could look after them for a while. That'd be a good prize.
Why not? I mean, we've all been there, haven't we? But well, I'm looking forward to this getting funded because it is like the missing piece for all of the other books that I already have, and because Travis is amazing. His art is just the bomb, and I like looking at it. It's just that cool. So I certainly hope.
Did you see the back cover? Sorry to interrupt, but did you see the back cover of the book?
No. Is that the...
So if you look on the Kickstarter page, we put it on there now. So it's a scene with some heroes looking into the Underdark, the underworld.
Oh, this image right here?
Yeah.
I hadn't even noticed. I blew right by it. Oh, that's very cool. That's, I like the fact that we have an artist that we work with. There's a nice guy who does like stuff, and you were saying, like, I think when we talked about the last Kickstarter, how you gave him ideas and he was freely able to and very willing to be like, hey, how about something like this? And you're like, oh, that's a way better idea than mine. So yeah, do that. Like,
yeah, that definitely happens. Actually, this time, he didn't ask me at all. He just said, check this out. And he always sends me the sketch first so I can go, there's a few there, in 8 years, a couple of times I've said, no, that's not quite what I'm looking for. But, he sent me the sketch and I went, that's amazing. And then, yeah, his coloring adds a whole other level. I love his choice of colors too. So this time he didn't even ask. He didn't get a description. He just sent the sketch and said, how about this for the back cover?
Well, I mean, that's the best part about being like a small maker, like a small publisher, because if you were to be doing this at let's pretend Wizards published third-party things, Like, could you imagine? Like the books that I've written, there are so many hoops you have to jump through. Your ideas, you have to like throw them, bounce them off the wall, and wait for people to say yes or no. And but this kind of stuff, I mean, you're working with people one on one is actually way better, where you can, uh, well, do that. Send a sketch. How about what do you think of this? Oh, I wasn't even thinking of the back cover yet, but awesome. You do that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, there's many. I think most publishers actually, you don't get any control over the cover. They just say, "Here's the cover. Here's the font. Here's what it
another
looks like."
backer, another backer.
What is
Sorry
that?
for the people listening to the audio.
$153?
Yep, $153. Yeah, I'm sorry for the people who are listening to
Oh,
the
oh,
episode.
another. Oh no,
Oh,
that
oh.
that was just me getting to see the update on my screen.
Yeah, I honestly, recording this entire episode, I keep doing that. All right, is it? No, no, no. I thought it moved. No, no, it didn't. But back to what I was saying. Yeah, working with people one on one is really it's very rewarding. I find, and because I work with all kinds of stuff from large corporation sort of companies to just Joe Smith who wants to like build something online,
Right.
and the Joe Smiths of the world are way more rewarding. I do, sure, I could go and like build something big and get paid millions of dollars, but why would I do that with a faceless corporation? But you know how it is. These kinds of things, you just have to, you know, harness the energy for this kind of creative work. And I'm looking at it again. I'm waiting for that number to kick over to 11.9. But I'm excited. I really want this to. I mean, as we said already, it's so close. It's just this far away, and it'll get through. Now, how do we encourage people to go for the stretch goals? What is your best advice for getting people to be like, look, a little bit more, and I can do these other things?
Yeah, it really will add a lot more depth to the book. It will give you a lot more art. I mean, one of the reasons that the Monster series was so successful is that you basically have art on every page.
Yeah,
So that is difficult to do. Those books are expensive to make. But the adventure books, we can still make them have quite a great look. Travis has done a bunch of art, which I'll post tonight. Some of it is already on the Kickstarter updates, but I'll post some more. And then, yeah, the stretch goals would enable us to, first of all, most importantly, double the monsters and NPCs, which is a big deal. I mean, 20 monsters, that's a fifth of the Phelan book right there.
and these are brand new, never before seen monsters, right? Just to
Brand
be
new.
clear.
There's two that are versions of creatures we've had before, but they are quite different, and they'll get new art. And then they're potentially up to 18 brand new characters and creatures you haven't seen. Um, and then there's the chance to get a city map, an extra. Right now, there'll likely be there's a city map. There's two dungeon maps. There's two underworld maps in the basic book, but we could add another underworld map, which would add more encounters. Um, and then we could add the city map, and we could add more art for the story part of the book and more art for our brand new magic items and spells. Um, and doing those is a lot of fun. I've always loved doing. We have several books that have some new magic items, but this time we're doing spells, which I always thought, how could you really add on to what the game has because there's so many.
Oh yeah.
But using the theme of the underworld and of the mushroom theme, I think I've found some new twists on spells. Um, so yeah, it's definitely going to improve the book. I know if we get all of them, all four that we have right now, yeah, the book would be, one of the nicest adventure books you'll find for sure.
Yeah, because it's very few times where I've actually got an adventure book of some kind. I mean, since I started playing when I was like, this high to a grasshopper. And that always was exciting, was being able to not the adventure. It was actually all of the other stuff. And the the adventure that I always forget the name of, but the one where there's like laser guns and a
Oh
crashed
yeah, yeah,
spacecraft.
Barrier Peaks.
That's the one. And but you got to like see this art of all these different things that you're encountering. And for the dungeon master, they were able to go like, this is what it looks like. I'll read you out the description, but here's actually some art to describe the scene, and here's what you're looking at. You don't, this is the stuff. But then you also had everything else in the book that sort of added to that story, and the art was only one piece. There was other stuff in the back that was kind of fascinating, mainly because it was introducing elements that are not quote unquote normal for uh, D&D sort of overall. But I still remember the adventure. I played it maybe 5 6 times as a kid, um, but it stuck with me because it had all of those extra pieces that kind of fleshed everything out.
Yes.
So it was kind of it was rewarding for a kid to be able to learn more about how stories are put together as well.
Yeah, yeah, for
Um,
sure. You're right. Because the way they sort of presented those modules that had extra art, it was almost like a movie making in a way. Like, you're seeing storyboarding in a way. Um,
it's true. That's
right?
very
And
true.
this new book, we don't have any full page art other than the cover and the two covers. But I do have an idea for one scene in the story, which I think is quite spectacular. That would look really good if it was a full page piece. It'd be the kind of thing you could hold up and show your players, and they would just be like, they're going to be blown away. So I hope we get a chance. I hope we have the funds to include that. And so stretch goals is really helpful. They really can add much more to what you've done. Yeah,
There's always, I mean, stretch goals to me are, as we said, sort of fleshing out the world, but more importantly, it's the idea that you're actually providing funding to make something you already think is cool better. And and I really come back always to, um, you're not a massive corporation with 75 employees. It's you and a friend named Travis, and I think you also have a layout guy that you know quite well. So there's
it's
all of
going to
these
be
things coming together.
yeah, the cartographer. The company is called Voyagers Workshop. So yeah, yeah, you're talking about
New Brunswick.
yeah in Nova Scotia in Canada on the East Coast. But yeah, you're talking about for sure less than half a dozen people for each of the books we make.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
And
not a
that's important to recognize because it's not like you're. I mean, Kickstarter. You and I have talked about this before, but has had some rough Kickstarters where the product is not necessarily what was advertised, or never showed up for that matter. I'm sure there's other, because Kickstarter kind of protects people, but it still leaves you with a sour taste in your mouth if that kind of stuff happens. So being able to um, recognize that there's a small group together that's been put together by you to make this product happen. And I just like that. I like supporting small publishers, small writers who maybe written a couple of books that are not like massive sellers, but are really amazing anyway. That kind of stuff. So I like supporting the small people. The small small is a bad word. What's a better word for than small?
the independent creators.
That's the word. There you go. Independent creators, because that to me is, the most important thing. And not to mention they're all mostly Canadians, I believe, pretty much, except one or two.
Not
But
Travis.
not Travis. Travis is like he's from Mars, apparently, where he's got all of this creative talent that because he always keeps saying how busy he is, and he's swamped with work. So take that AI. But anyway, I'm ranting about how small people get screwed over by big ones. Not mentioning any names. But anyway, I really want this to kick over. I really want this to hit 12,000 before we end. But any final words before we do close up for the week? Come on, just two more backers, or even one with a really big thing. But
Yeah, I'll just keep talking until it ticks over.
Excellent.
So
I'm gonna get some popcorn.
the main thing to remind people again is that it only goes for a very short period. So yeah, last time we did it for about 3 weeks. This week a little bit less than 3 weeks, and it finishes on Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and we have 300 people who've signed up for the 48-hour alert, which will go out
Yes.
tomorrow evening on the West Coast. And that's more people that are in the Kickstarter itself. So we're hoping that we can definitely fund and get more stretch goals. However, we won't count our chickens until they're hatched.
Yeah, and that's actually the sad part that some things don't get the proper, don't break that funding, and
Mhm.
it never happened. So 3 days, people, 3 more days. You better get in there and hit second or third or all stretch goals. That'll be my recommendation. Um, excuse me. Yeah, what are you listening to us for? Hurry up. Go to Kickstarter.com.
Add a new book into your collection, and you can play this. Many adventures, like Shane mentioned, he played that Barrier Peaks adventure um, many times. And you can do that obviously with these adventures, but because we have low, medium, and high levels, you can actually alter it many times. We're going to give the DM a lot of options to change the adventure up and add new elements. So you don't just have one story.
That's true. And, of course, this is not going to be the only adventure. There's going to be more. And knowing how Andrew's brain works, there will be tie ins. Very small, maybe hidden, but if you play one adventure, you'll need to play the next. So hurry up, get to the Kickstarter. Why are you talking to us? Stop talking to us. Don't listen to us anymore. Go to the Kickstarter, fund the rise of the Mushroom King immediately. Uh, Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. And we will see you guys next week with another episode and hopefully be basking in the glory of a finished Kickstarter.
Later.